All right, welcome back to the Coach and Collective podcast. So it's been a while since we've done a little bit of a one-on-one, but today we are welcoming on the pod Lachie McFie. So we've been engaging probably via social media just because I coach a client's partner, and had a few back and forths of value regarding different business pieces about coaching, PEDs, sales, etc. So I think we'll just start with where introduce yourself, and then we'll get stuck into everything from there.
Cool. Thanks for having me on the potty.
You're welcome.
I have been in the industry now for about 6 or so years. A decent bit of time. I started with obviously face-to-face personal training, which obviously always just evolves into, if you know what you're doing and the direction you want to go, online coaching all the time. I realized that that was going to be the avenue that's going to provide the most opportunity in terms of working with the kind of athletes that I wanted to work with. Um, Myself, I actually have competed before. I've done two preps, but only one of them came to fruition, sadly. Obviously, COVID and stuff. Great time.
Oh, the
But
joys. Yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So it all sort of kicked off in like 2019 is when I really started with everything. And I was working with Brandon Kempter for quite a few years. So it's definitely something that has not really happened overnight. It's a long term or a slow fuse, if you will.
And I feel like a lot of people fail to acknowledge how slow a burn it is in
Oh
regards to
yeah.
eating itself. Business is business, obviously. And I regret not just persisting with it from like 2019 up until now, like in a just manner where it's like longevity is the answer.
Well, yeah, I feel as though people really fail to wrap their heads around the idea that being sort of present is quite a powerful force in terms of a business aspect. Obviously, we want to be making huge strides all the time, but in an industry like this one, if you are consistently present, in a way, it does show reliability. It shows the ability to show up long term, and that's dependable, which is what a client really looks for.
hmm And it just transferred to all areas of your life as well, in my view.
Absolutely.
Yeah. When did you compete?
I competed in 2022, so it's been a while now.
hmm
Uh, Probably won't get back on stage until end of next year. That's the idea.
Yeah.
So it really comes down to the idea. If I have more than 10 clients competing season C next year, I
hmm
will not be competing as well.
hmm
I'm not willing to compromise either.
Of
For
course.
me, bodybuilding is a personal endeavor. It's my hobby. I'm a hobby builder, really.
hmm
Whereas my career, full-time career, is coaching. So if I was to have to pick between the two, it would always be coaching. So if I can't bring it to fruition end of next year, it will be season A in 27.
Cool. And what show did you do in 2022 as well?
We were just talking about ICN, but ICN was actually the show I did back in 22.
Yeah, I got the
Um,
impression it was a natural fit. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Mm.
So I made the jump to the IFBB in 2023,
hmm
and then obviously looking to participate end of next year. So like 3 or so years of improvement season.
Yeah, because I actually did I never did a natural show myself. I did the first show back 2019, which was Bendigo Classic. You might not even know what that
I
is.
don't even know what that is.
Yeah, no, how old would you have been back then? Pretty young. Oh, not that young. You would have been almost 20.
Yeah, I was 20 at the time.
Yeah, no, and that was my first show. And it's actually funny because after I did that first show, I said I'd never compete again. And then, yeah, as you said, I did have a failed prep in 2022, but that wasn't for
Yeah,
COVID. That was just shit happens. And then I only
absolutely.
decided to get back into it this year. But like even then, a lot of people were carrying on when I did well in my show this year. Oh, first timer, first time. And it's like, I'm not a first timer. That's my first time in men's physique. And even then, like I've been doing this for so long that
Yeah.
you're not really like I knew what I was. It's not like I was one of those first timers, and you can probably resonate with this. You know, those first timers, they have no idea what they get themselves into.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
I knew every bit of what was happening. Like I knew what I was going to feel. I knew what was going to suffer, what wasn't going to suffer, etc. So it just makes it that's the hardest part, I think, for a first timer. It's not
Yeah.
anything else. Yeah.
It's the unknown.
It's always harder than you think it's going to be as well.
Well, I mean, yeah, like I always stress to clients now that the period of time prior to the preparation, you really are just trying to set your ducks up in a row. So
Mhm.
it's not just about like, is the visual ready? Do we have an appropriate body composition to commence this preparation? It's like, well, that's all well and good, but what's going on in terms of your, interpersonal relationships?
Mhm.
What is your financial situation like? As deep and personal of a question that is,
Mhm.
preparation can be somewhat pricey, especially for females. So it's like if you don't have these things aligned, then
Mhm.
you're just going to make this process far more challenging than it needs to be. So things like relationships, finances, timing, like everything, the stage will always be there. So you just need to get as many of these lined up as possible. At the end of the day, you can't get everything perfect, but you want to try your damnedest to get them to align.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. And you often see people as well in preps, which you probably have seen before. They put their whole lives on the back burner as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and then they don't realize that once it's over, nothing's going to really change.
No.
So you're going to be back bombarded. Like I've seen people quit their jobs in prep
Mm,
just because like, oh, I'll deal with it afterwards, and it's like, oh, you're going to be dreading that day. Yeah, or like relationship breakdown. It's like, yeah, we're just going to deal with it afterwards, and then there's no relationship to be had after the prep.
no.
Things like that. Yeah. And financial is a big one. I feel like you can do a prep cheap.
Oh, absolutely. But
Yeah.
like, it's hard to explain. I feel as though when people realize after the fact how much money they've
Yeah.
spent,
Yeah.
I can
That's.
personally attest to this because, you are so dopamine deprived. You're
Mhm.
looking for any sort of response from the brain. So you do silly things. You're like, well, I'm actually gonna like book a holiday, or I don't really need to, but I'm just online shopping, doing all kinds of shit. I booked a holiday during my prep, and then I bought like expensive home treadmill. I bought all this other random shit that I just absolutely didn't need. Because you're just looking for a dopaminergic hit.
Yeah.
You don't realize until after the fact the kind of errors you've made.
And that shortfall in dopamine, I feel like is not really spoken about at all.
No,
Yeah, because
no,
people think it's hunger, it's hunger. It's when you're deep in it, it's not really hunger you're chasing. You're
no.
chasing a hit.
Yes.
Yes, like a hit. And I remember like I got so sucked into like vaping, like modafinil, like all little bits and pieces like that, that when you come out of it, and when you've fed your brain back with all those like stimulating concepts, I'll say again, you find yourself in a place where you're even worse.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, in the weeks which follow.
Yeah.
Mm,
It's challenging. You don't realize what you're missing that deep. Like early in the prep, you're like, oh my God, I feel like shit all of a
mm,
sudden. And I can feel my brain isn't working at
mm,
100%. But
mm.
as time goes on, you kind of just stop realizing. And all of a sudden, it's only once you start regaining that sort of cognitive function once again, you're like, oh God, I've been a zombie. I've been an
Yeah.
absolute zombie. I've been a prick to the people around me. And
Mhm.
so that's what I mean. This first prep is always the hardest. Afterwards, every prep afterwards, you very much know what to expect. And so you can align things more appropriately.
Mhm. It's actually interesting you say that because that takes into our next point too. I do find even with PED usage, and I put a post up about this maybe like 2 days ago. A lot of people don't realize as well that when they are utilizing PEDs, the impact that it does have on their personality and their psychology and things like that. And you don't
Mm,
realize until you do back off. And then you're sort of like, oh, this is what it's like to be human.
mm,
Yeah, and I think it's just because there's such a gradual accrual in this particular circumstance that
yes.
yeah, yeah, and you're sort of taken back because I got people that I know who you can visibly see their personality and demeanor change, and whether they become cognizant of that or not when they back off, I don't know.
I mean, once again, it comes full circle. It's the same idea as like you don't notice the 1% gradual improvement to the visual day in,
Yeah,
day out. But 2 years from now, you're going to put the photos side by side and be like, holy shit, right?
mhm, yeah,
It's the same thing with your psychology. The difference is when you start talking, pharmaceutical intervention here, when you back off, you might not be able to regain where you were. I mean,
mhm,
that sounds very dramatic and very kind
mhm.
of daunting, but at the same time, I feel as though not enough thought goes into some of the decisions that are made in a preparation.
Yeah, and there's definitely not enough thought put into those decisions at all by most.
Yeah.
And there is data to suggest that, like from a neurological standpoint, with PED usage, I think this would come down to anything that would specifically impact your brain because I feel like some people don't recognize. Like, I'm not sure what you're like, but I even personally believe that just years and years of stress and pressure through work has impacted my thought processes,
Oh,
my
absolutely.
neurology. Yeah. Um, where was I with that? Yeah, there is data to indicate that, or not data. I guess you could say data, not stuff that I'm super familiar with, is why I don't want to dive into it. But to suggest that there is a point of no return.
Yes.
Like libido is a big one. I'm not sure how much you've heard of that because it's not
Yeah.
well
Yeah.
documented, but um, even like I don't know if you've dealt with clients like this or you've known people because I don't deal with it much, but they come off everything, they run a PCT, levels are normal, no libido.
No.
Yeah.
It's because it's once again, it's deeper than meets the eye.
Mm,
People fail to understand that this sort of, let's just say, surface level testing that you do a lot of the time is just insufficient. A
Yeah.
good example is they see, oh, well, my test is back to normal. My estradiol is at a
Mhm.
regular value. My OGF1 is sitting where it was prior to use, blah, blah, blah. Like happy days. My cholesterol's healthy again. I'm not dying, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
But there are certain things that are a lot deeper that do require an appropriate amount of attention. So if you have all on paper, like healthy blood markers, your heart's healthy, you've had an echo done, etc., but you still have no libido, you still have like your psychology is off, for lack of a better word. It's like, well, hang on, we actually need to do a bit of a deeper dive, and then we need to kind of work backwards and go, what would have caused these issues? Therefore, we can start to figure out how to remedy them. And it's not quite as simple as just a one-to-one amelioration. Like it can be quite a time-consuming process, taking many months, even years sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes I even wonder if people do return to normalcy because most guys do end up with some kind of pharmaceutical intervention in the long term as well.
Mm.
But I think even just bouncing back off like the lab work and it's all being surface level, if you just jump on like an iMedical, the amount of tests that are available, like it shows you, and like that's not even everything. That's just what's available within just generalized clinics.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so you don't really know. And like obviously there's plenty of research coming out around just like the brain health and the impact that PEDs will have here, which
Mm.
is something that we may never understand. We probably won't really ever understand when you really think about it because it will take so long to really get to the bottom of that. And it's like with anything as well in this game, like you have a heart attack at 55 years old. Like, was it because of the PEDs? Was it because you did this? Was it because you smoked in your 20s? Was it bad luck? You know what I mean?
Mm.
Yeah, you'll never know.
I mean, hindsight's a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
And a lot of the decision making we make now as coaches on this sort of frontier, I guess you could say, is built on the back of
Mhm.
a decent bit of hindsight from the people before us. Right.
Mhm.
So that's all well and good. And I think it's very important for us to acknowledge that. But at the same time, even us, as I said, quote unquote, the frontier, there is still so much left to learn, to uncover, especially with the brain.
I remember years ago I was trying to get to real like so what I would do is I would pick specific topics and I'd try to really deep dive them.
Mm.
And I spoke to someone who's really, really good with it, who you would know, but I'll tell you later. And he actually said to me, "You don't realize the rabbit hole you're creating for yourself right now." And I said, "What do you mean?" He's like, "It's never ending." He's like, "You will never get to the point where you're happy with a topic and happy to move into the next." So
Mm.
if that's the position that we're in, just a general person is going to have like a fraction of that, and that's kind of scary. But
Yeah.
again, the bit more you understand it, probably the worse it becomes in regards to acknowledging the risk. I think I've told you this before. We did a podcast with Dean St. Mart, and the way that he deep dives everything, you get to the end of it, and you're like, maybe we shouldn't be doing this. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it's like maybe we shouldn't. Like, maybe this is stupid, but like he still does it, and
Mm.
he understands that quite well. Well, based on what he said, that was a fucking heavy podcast, man.
I'll have to go
Yeah,
back and listen to it.
I struggled to keep up with that. Yeah,
Yeah, no.
yeah,
He's made some interesting comments before. I think
yeah.
he's quite well read. He's
Mm,
obviously a very well educated man,
mm,
and when you do start diving into these topics, it can be quite formidable because
mm.
much, as you said, like the deeper you go, the more you realize you don't know.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, and there's always going to be someone who disagrees because a lot of it's open to
Absolutely.
interpretation as well. And I'm a big believer in like the data will say one thing, but you can look at indirect interpretations of different concepts
Mm.
and how it could lead to this. But that goes for anything in life, really.
Well, yeah,
Um,
absolutely. I mean, you start getting into how these discussions are had and
mm,
how the clinical evidence was arrived upon,
mm,
and you start to go, right, yes, it's saying or suggesting XYZ, but
mm,
is this actually applicable to, let's just say, every user of X pharmaceutical? Or
yeah.
is this more of an anecdote that we can apply
Mm,
here? Even though it's technically clinical data, is
mm,
it more anecdotal? Because it's like the same idea as, oh, well, we know if we pump a rat 3 times worth its body weight full of alcohol sugars,
mm,
it's all of a sudden it's going to die. You're like,
mm,
well, was it the alcohol sugars or was it the fact that you pumped it full of something 3 times its body weight and then it
mm,
died?
yeah.
So
Mm,
it's worth understanding. You need to be quite discerning with how you approach anything when it comes to data. But there are certain things that we can take with some degree of certainty, or at least an educated understanding of typical risk aversion risk factors.
mhm. Yeah, no, I agree with everything you've said there as well. And yeah, because even like some of the models that they have used to derive like data points and whatnot, you do explore it and you do think to yourself,
Mm.
well, that could apply for almost anything. Like
Absolutely.
you could have a lethal outcome in someone overhydrating, but that doesn't mean it's going to happen.
Mm.
I guess it doesn't really take us to the next point, but we previous to this, what we were discussing. So we do have, let's say we've got a new client coming on the books. It's not someone who has come in and has been blasting and blasting, and then you're just cleaning it up. It's someone who's never touched it before, has run competitive seasons, and is looking to jump into the dark side. What's a discussion that we would lead? What is some discussion you would lead to here?
I think most
Start. And
importantly,
also vague question, sorry.
no, this is all good.
Yeah.
I think because, well, it's relatively common for people like
Yeah.
us. It's
Mm,
a lot of people do approach coaches when they're like, well, this is something I don't know enough about,
mm,
and it's something that I would like to do. So I would like to, this is when you start hiring someone because it is really outside of the
mm,
majority of the population's scope.
mm.
Still out of our scope, technically, too. Don't get it twisted.
Technically, yeah, it is. And I
Yeah,
always say
very
this
out
to
of our scope.
people. Because even when I say, because you get some people that really take it as gospel, and it's like you're giving them
Mm.
medical advice. Like, this is not medical advice. Medical
No.
advice, this does not exist. Like,
No.
this is me. I'm just providing education. And
Yeah,
you can make the decision of whether you think it's the appropriate thing to do or not. Yeah.
absolutely.
Mhm.
But I think eventually, because as I said, this situation is inevitable for people like us.
Mhm.
It's really more less about a question of necessarily, let's say, what you want to do, and more about a question about values.
Mhm.
Why is this important to you? What is doing this, achieve for you? What's the end goal outcome here? I think beyond that, of course, we need to start talking a little bit nitty gritty, quite personal, being like, right, let's talk health. Do
Mhm.
you have any family history of things like heart disease, stroke, any sort of cardiac events, any neurological events, so dementia, Alzheimer's, stuff like that. Obviously, we're trying to tick off the big three,
Yeah.
right? Brain, heart, kidneys.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, you are asking a lot of personal information about this potential client.
Mhm.
So you need to paint a relatively comprehensive picture of who they are, what their family background is like, and what they want to achieve.
Mhm.
So I've had people that I've just straight up said, "Hey, I understand that this is something you'd like to do, but I just don't think it's appropriate for you. I don't think that this is something you would actually want to do long term. And as a result, I would recommend that you do not do this."
Mhm. How do they take that when you say that, though?
I mean, I've potentially lost, I've lost potential clients over it for
Mm.
sure. I've had,
You'll always lose a client over it. No,
yeah,
I find sometimes you get a very dismissive answer, and that sends them, and they just go to someone else.
yeah. Well, I mean,
Or
someone's
they
just like,
feel
yeah, that's
it.
fine. Jump on 500 tests. Go
Yeah.
on.
Mhm. Yeah.
Whereas if
Yeah.
you come to me and you've got like a family history of heart disease, you have some, let's just say mild stenosis or something like that, I'm
Mhm.
gonna be like, hey, probably don't fucking do this.
Yeah. Mhm.
I'm not comfortable being the oversight for you or even just some random dude on the internet to give you any sort of guidance here because your risk factor is exponentially greater than the average Joe. And
Mhm.
as a result, I don't think you should do this. And whether or not you want to work with me or tell me to piss off, doesn't matter. I'm
Mhm.
pretty much going to hold to that standard. Like, we're not doing this. If you're with me, this is not something we're going to do.
Mhm. And people do fail to realize that it is a relatively low ROI
Yes.
thing to be doing. Like bodybuilding is just low ROI. I can't say it today. It's low return on investment.
Yes, absolutely.
Bodybuilding in general. So I almost think that if you're not in the space,
Mm.
being in the space like we are, the return on investment does exponentially improve because it
Yes.
is supportive of what we do and our lifestyles are supportive of what we do to a point where it's not as invasive. But if
Mm.
you're like a plumber, the return on investment's not there, like to
Yeah.
such a capacity. So then when you pair that with the risks, and when their why for doing it's not strong enough, it sort of reaffirms that because it's not
Mm.
often not because they love bodybuilding. But the way that I separate things is as well, I sort of touched on this earlier. You get two types of clients. You get clients who hit the books. What have you done in the past? I smashed MK677. I did a test cycle. I did Dynabol cycle. I want to do this. I want to do this. And it's very easy to say, yeah, sweet, this is what we're going to do because they've already done everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, and they've already breached that boundary well and truly. But when you're
Mm.
taking someone who's a regimented natural competitor and then you're taking them to that next step, you are a part of them breaching that boundary. And that's
Yes.
where I think that we assert a lot more responsibility. But in saying this, most of those kind of individuals, you could raise those kind of risk factors with, and they'd
Mm.
be very accepting of it. And if it wasn't like, okay, I understand, it would be, okay, what could I do or who could I speak to make sure that we can still do this safely? Whether
Yeah.
that be them regularly seeing a cardiologist or whatever it might be.
Yeah, I feel as though, and this is just my bias showing now, but
Mm,
some of the best enhanced bodybuilders
mm,
were previously high level natties, right?
yeah.
We all know the Sean Clarita story, but
Mhm,
this comes from the idea of if you are living the lifestyle and using the word regimented again, if you are exceptionally regimented and disciplined to the point where it's just second nature to you, taking that next step is going to be less invasive, as you said,
mhm,
because realistically, you're adding one more variable to the picture.
mhm,
So it does become a more manageable piece. If you have someone who's, relatively young, let's just say younger than 25, and
mhm,
they have never competed before, they've never spent much time bodybuilding, and they're just like, well, I'm actually Gen Pop, but
mhm,
I'm a plumber and I want to be the biggest fucking plumber in Australia. You're
mhm.
like, mate, I don't think those core values are aligned.
Yeah,
It's
no.
quite incongruent with one another.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm as much as I like obviously wholeheartedly agree with that concept, I do understand that some people you need to make mistakes. You need to fuck around. You need to live. So
Yeah.
sometimes I know it's not there's nothing analytical to that whatsoever. But like when you hear a 25-year-old with not a definitive purpose say I want to give it a crack, they're gonna do it anyway. And
Mm,
I've been there before. Obviously, you probably got a little bit of a different story to me because my story was essentially I was young. I just did a cycle because I wanted to look good. And then when I went to compete, I'm like, well, I can't compete naturally because I've done that. So
mm.
jumped on for that, PCT'd afterwards, and then a couple of years later, I'm like, oh, I might give this a proper go. And then I probably would have been 27 when I sort of got into it. Yeah, I'm 31
Yeah.
now. But yeah, so that's probably where you lose all that complex, all the complexities get dissolved in that situation. I don't know what your thoughts are on something like that. I know
Yeah, I agree.
it's hard as a coach because that's not really what we're here to do. But at the same time, sometimes I think of it in a sense where because you do get clients like that,
Mm,
and it's like, well. I could not help them, but they're going to do it anyway. And
mm.
they're probably going to listen, and you can guide them on the right path to some degree anyway.
Yeah.
Well,
And the way that sort of translates then is instead of just being like, well, they're going to do it anyway,
yeah.
but now they're doing it under some degree of respective authority. So you
Mm.
can, be somewhat risk averse as opposed
Yes.
to just
Yeah.
going in there and going, yeah, I'm going to get fucking huge and I'm going to, use 2 grams of this and just fingers crossed. And you're like, well, look, you're going to do it anyways.
Mm.
This is the most rational and reasonable path forward. And I
Mm.
would recommend we do XYZ. Once again, not medical doctor, it's not medical advice whatsoever, but
Mhm.
you can really amplify the risk management section.
Yeah. I also find just on the contrary of that too, some of these guys in particular are the ones who probably have the highest expectations as well.
Mm,
So that's where it becomes more difficult. So that's
yeah.
where I don't necessarily like those kind of circumstances because they're the ones that are expecting like in 20 weeks they're going to look like this. Where someone who's on a longer journey, it's very much just like I just want to improve my rate of progression. And that's where it needs to be. You're looking at an improved rate of progression. So if you're progressing at 1.0 times, you want to potentially look at moving that up to 1.5 to 2.0, which is realistic. I think that's
Yeah.
probably even like probably
Yeah.
conservative when you really think about it. Yeah. Natural bodybuilding
It,
is slow. Yeah.
natural bodybuilding is, and that was kind of the reason why
Yeah. Mhm.
you heard it here first, jumped
Yeah.
from natural
Yeah.
to enhanced because I was
Yeah.
like, yes, I made some relatively stark improvements between the
Mhm.
failed prep and the 2022 prep. But even then, it was like, I think it was a shitload. I think it was like 2 kilos in
Mhm.
2 or so years, which is a lot, but I would still consider that relatively novel territory. I was still
Yeah.
working with Brandon, and Brandon is very, very good at what he does. And so as a result, living the lifestyle in such a regimented way, I really did wring the towel out quite a bit.
Mhm.
That's not realistic for the majority of people.
Mhm.
And beyond that point, you're looking at maybe, fuck, you'd be lucky to get 250 grams of lean body mass a year.
Mhm.
And
Depending on
that's,
where you're at, of course.
yeah. I mean, that's like someone who's relatively well versed in natural bodybuilding, anyways. We're talking someone
Yeah.
who's been doing it for 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
250 grams a year is pretty rational.
Yeah. Because the strides you make in natural bodybuilding typically come from conditioning,
Yes,
right from show
yes.
to show. Yeah. It's difficult to bring up lackluster body part. And you do find
Yeah.
you have to put individuals through like 3 year off seasons. But
Mm.
obviously, it's a whole for anyone listening, it's a whole different conversation if you're in that earlier phase of your journey.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's where it would. So when we touch on that, we're probably talking when you get to very regimented, multiple years under the belt. Because yeah, I think there was one of the bodybuilders years ago did like some case studies and testing on it too, and his progression across the years in terms of tissue accretion was like shifting dramatically
Mm.
to a point where like he was realizing nothing. How he quantified that, I can't remember because it was a very long time ago that I was referencing this. I think it might have been Aaron Curtis even.
Aaron Curtis. Now that's a name I haven't heard in a while.
Yeah, and he was like the epitome of natural bodybuilding in terms of his own
Yeah.
information. Like
Yeah.
he wouldn't even go off plan for a whole year at one point.
Well, I mean, that brings me back to someone like Brandon. I know he's not the only one, but having worked with him for so long, and
Mhm,
then also um, having the privilege of calling him a friend,
mhm.
I know that the dude's a robot. Like he is exceptionally uh, on the spectrum,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
but in a good way. Like he's very good at what he does, and I don't think he just really has an off-plan meal. He's like he fucking takes a plane somewhere. It's like
mhm,
that story of Ronnie who gets off the plane. He goes, "I just need to train legs right now. I'm due for leg day," and
yeah,
it has to happen.
mhm,
So anyone who knows him quite well in that regard. It's just he doesn't miss a beat. So
mhm,
if you're at that level, the level of accretion of lean body mass that you are achieving is so minimal,
mhm,
but the output is just completely disproportionate.
And it makes sense as to why it's not for everyone.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the only other thing I remember when the NBA, Stu from NBA raised me, here's just a little comment from him which stuck with me. Um, Once you open that door to become an enhanced bodybuilder, the door's closed, like you're gone. You can't go back.
Yeah.
And you don't
Absolutely.
realize that once you're taking that plunge, you open up your scope to so many risk factors, many of which you might not be comfortable with, because you
Mm.
don't realize how much it takes to get to where like a open or classic bodybuilder is in the IFBB,
Yeah.
and that could essentially end someone's career
Well, I mean, yeah.
because they
Like,
might not want to do this, or they might not want to push gear for 7, 8 years if they want to stay conservative.
mm.
Yeah, and then, well, what do you do next?
That's it. You're
Yeah.
done. I mean, I can use myself as a personal reference in this
Mm,
scenario. Like I finished 2022, and then it's been now 3 years. It'll be 4 years total between seasons. Originally, I was going to do men's physique, but
mm,
I find as though this is a whole different tangent, but the idea of like you need to align with what you're looking to bring to fruition in terms of visual. So I tried, but I could not bring myself to love men's physique for myself.
mhm,
And as a result, I was like, well, I can't then jump on stage in 24 like I originally intended
mhm,
because I'm just not going to have the requisite tissue. So I
mhm,
was like, right, well, let's do another year, maybe 2 years. We'll see how it goes. It's ended up being going for 4 years, it'll be between seasons. And I would have put on, yes, like, oh, I mean, I was 67, 68 on stage last
yeah.
time. And I would say I'm hoping to be close to 80 on
What are you playing at
stage.
the moment?
93.
And how tall are you as well?
173.
Oh,
So
you might. Yeah, I'm 172.
yeah.
Yeah.
So exactly. So the fact that you're 103 now with relatively comparable conditioning, it
hmm
speaks volumes. It's just compounded time. And
I do tend to allow my body fat to creep a little bit further away, but
yeah,
that's just genetically slash work ethic.
I feel better when
Yeah.
I'm a little bit fatter.
Yeah, me too. I do find high 90s, I feel my best. That's comfortable. I can go out for a dinner. It's not problematic.
Mm,
I sleep well, etc. But I was on stage at 77 when I competed.
exactly.
Yeah, but I
You're
lost a
always
lot of
leaner than you
weight.
think you're going
Yeah.
to be. You're going to be
Oh
lighter than
yeah.
you think. Yeah.
Well, even when you really think about it, like the pro men's physique cap's like 84. So realistically, like I'm not saying that I'm pushing for any kind of pro cap, but I'm just saying like that by theory should mean that I should not be heavier than 84,
Mm,
like
exactly.
no matter what. So realistically, like 80 kilos would probably be a good weight. Yeah.
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 Yep.
Like, and it's the same as classic. Like your weight cap would be like 80. You might be a bit
89.
taller. Oh, so you go up because you're that centimeter taller.
It's
Yeah.
wild, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
absolutely
Yeah.
bonkers. So
Yeah.
weight caps are a funny one, and I have, I could sit here and talk about them for ages, but
Mm,
it is bonkers how disproportionate they are. Once again, for
mm,
instance, I'm going to be nowhere near my weight cap in
mm,
terms of 89.6, whereas I had two competitors in this most recent season who are just a little bit taller than me. I think they're like 179,
mm,
180.
Hmm.
somewhere around there. And their weight cap for both of them was 91.6.
Hmm.
Now, just because they're a little bit taller than me, they only get maybe like a kilo or two, really,
Hmm.
two or so kilos. Yeah. They ended up both having to push to make weight cap,
Hmm.
which is insane. So both of them, one of them can never do classic again because he will never be light enough to participate within that weight realm. And then there's me, who has taken 3 years off and it's going to take another year, potentially even 2 years, and I still will be almost 10 kilos away from my weight cap.
Hmm. I do think as well though the weight caps does indicate to you it's just like it's just disqualify someone from the classic physique category.
Yes, that's
Yeah,
all it is.
and when you really think about it, if you are a classic physique, you're probably quite small at the waist, quite small at the wrist, quite small at the ankles, so
Mm.
on and so forth. So as a result, that would carry less weight in regards to like bone density, like kind of, you know
Yeah.
what I'm trying to say.
I mean,
And
look, I've seen some guys who I'm like, I want you
yeah.
tested under a fucking microscope because I think you have bird bones. I don't think
Yeah.
that you're a human being.
Yeah. No, yeah, because I've seen some real light dudes as well. I remember this
Mm.
one guy that won a natural comp a few years ago. He was like 60 kilos. You have to see the dude. I'll send you a photo later. I know who it is. I just don't want to talk about. I don't want to give him the credit actually. But like you never know. It doesn't matter. Um,
Mm.
yeah, like even when I would tell people I was 77 kilos on stage, they're like, what? I'm like, yeah. And like, oh, but you're like 104. I'm like, I don't know, man.
It's
Like,
all relative.
yeah, because I'm like, yeah, I even through carb loading, man. I don't know what you get through carb loading. My weight doesn't go up much. Yeah,
No, if anything, I lose weight when
yeah.
carbonated during a peak.
Hmm.
Um, but that's
Hmm.
at the end of the day, like weight is so irrelevant unless you are trying to make a weight cap.
Yeah.
I say this all the time to people. I get clients going, "Oh, my weight's not moving up, my weight's not moving down." I'm like, "Yeah, but the visual shifting, and that's what I
Mhm.
care about."
I do find as well, though, there is a point where the weight needs to shift.
Yes.
I say this to everyone because some people will just, well, you'll start by saying that, and then all of a sudden your tone will change. Okay, now it is at the weight move. Oh, but I'm changing. And it's like, it's been like 7 weeks. Like
Mm.
something's got to shift, you know?
Yeah, that's
Eventually.
different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, it's going to be different. I might jump into the next topic, but
Yeah.
we want to touch on this is basically the bulk of the, well, not bulk, but I guess the incentive for people to listen. DHT shortage and what's that meant for us, what's that meant for you, clients, alternatives, so on and so forth. We could deep dive here for a while. But yeah,
Yeah.
how have you found that with clientele and friends, even other people you know in the industry?
I mean, realistically, the great DHT drought of 2025, as it's
Mhm.
come to be known,
Yeah.
it's certainly turned a lot of what people thought they knew about the game on its
Mhm.
head.
Yeah.
And it's really kind of separated the good from the great,
Mhm.
um, in terms of the people that understand this stuff. That being said, I feel as though a lot of the decision making that is done around how to, replace these things or make up for this deficit is simply not as one-sided as it's made out to be online.
Mhm.
Good example, people don't realize how good we had it in terms
Yeah.
of, let's just say, Primobolan and Masteron. They fail to encapsulate the sheer awesomeness of these two drugs in
Mhm.
terms of what they provide in terms of an incentive there. It's so easy for people to see that and go, well, yeah, I'll just do the next best thing because they're not available now.
Mhm.
And they just don't, they're not replaceable one to one.
Well,
Well,
there's
I know we can replace Primo and Mass pretty one to one in a lot of individuals, but
Mhm.
that they are rare in terms of that congruency.
Mhm. I wouldn't even know what the next best option would be when you really think about it, because I don't
Well,
think
that's the
it's
question, isn't it?
necessarily comparable. Yeah.
Mm,
Unlike even so, I always say to people like the reason DHT derivatives are so, namely Primobolan and Masteron, are so effective is
mm.
probably the wrong word, but I'll give context, is the longevity they offer.
Yes.
Yeah. And the predictability they offer as well. You can
Yes.
run them for extended periods of time, and as we touched on, bodybuilding is a long endeavor. So you could probably run a te if you had the testosterone and masteron at the right ratios, reasonable dosages, you could run that for a year. Like,
I
and I
mean,
don't think there'd be any,
yeah,
yeah, like I think that would be a reason there'd be a reasonable case where that could happen, or a reasonable world where that could happen. You couldn't do that with anything else.
no.
Yeah. It's not
But
saying its own. Yeah.
yeah. No, you go.
No, you go, you go. It's all good.
I was just going to say, like, when it comes to those drugs, if you could optimize it realistically with what you've already got in place, you can almost run it indefinitely.
Yeah.
Like hypothetically, if you had the optimal testosterone replacement dosage for you as a genetically unique individual. And then say that's maybe
Mhm.
200 tests, just hypothetically. That's not really TRT. That's a
Mhm.
cycle, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Mhm.
but say you're using that much,
Mhm.
but you can justify it because you add in maybe 50 to 75 milligrams of one of those DHT derivatives. And because of how well tolerated that drug is and how it allows you to tolerate more testosterone as a result, if your body has no issue from like a lipid skewing standpoint and everything is a-okay when we check under the hood, you can almost run that indefinitely at those sort of dosages, which is
Yeah, and I know people that do.
bananas.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I look, yeah, so just to give some context in regards to what I said previously, I'm not talking 500 tests, 1,000 mass. You can
No,
run.
no, I know what you mean.
Yeah, just within reason. But
Mm.
I don't see a case where you could do that with anything else.
No.
Because if we're talking about boldenone, like we would see, like I've seen significant skewing of like hematology with boldenone. Not to
Mm.
say, again, people will argue that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it depends how directly or indirectly you want to look at it.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
What are your thoughts on that in general?
Well, I mean, the majority of people, I would say, are just swapping out the DHT derivative one to one for either boldenone or nandrolone.
Yeah.
It's important to note that these drugs have been around for a very, very long time,
Mm.
and we do have a very comprehensive understanding of them. So it's not as if we're walking into territory that is uncharted. We have a lot of data on them. Keep in mind, of course, with this sort of topic, there is so much into individuality and so much anecdote. And I don't want to say that, it's not clinical data, therefore it's irrelevant because we are doing things that are very hard to quantify as bodybuilders. So realistically, anecdote does have weight to some extent here. So we're not saying that these drugs are completely bloody useless,
Mhm.
although I'm not a huge fan. But
Yeah.
something like Boldenone, it doesn't replace what Primo or Mass can do. So
Mhm.
the main reasons that people would use something like Boldenone are because A, it has a more favorable androgen to estradiol, or let's just say estrogen more specifically, ratio here, and therefore its aromatization or its conversion to estrogen is around 50% what testosterone is.
Mhm.
As a result, it would function somewhat more akin to those primobolan or masteron in regards to aiding the androgen to estrogen ratio in favor of androgens.
Mhm.
However, when you start to dig deeper, it's really not that simple because unlike testosterone, which being a bioidentical compound,
Mhm.
the body knows what to do with it pretty well, and it also knows how to convert the estradiol through the aromatase enzyme to estradiol. Whereas the estrogen that you get from boldenone is predominantly E1, so estrone rather than E2 estradiol. What that means is you're going to get a lot of the side effects of, that high estrogen value that people always associate it with. So people are like, oh my God, I'm moody, having issues with libido or, ED, stuff like that, or quite watery, potential gynecomastia, stuff like that. And they're like, well, I've got high E2, obviously. So I'm just going to pop an AI here to get my estrogen down. Then you fail to realize that you don't have high E2, you have high E1
Mhm.
conversion. So not only is your E2 actually either in range or below range,
Mhm.
but you're just going to be making the problem worse by adding an aromatase inhibitor. So estrone is different to estradiol in the fact that it gives you all the negatives with none of the benefits. So no joint protection, no cardio or neurological support.
Mhm.
It's not anabolic. It's everything negative and nothing positive. So
Yeah.
when you're getting that 50% in terms of aromatase,
Mhm.
that's a lot of estrone and very little, if any, estradiol.
And I do find that people do start to confuse the suppression of estrogen with the elevation of estrogen as well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
and you do get because it does present symptomology of that suppression of estrogen, but even in lab work, that's going to come up as a suppression of estrogen too.
Yeah,
Um, the only thing I find with that concept, though, is unlikely to drive any gynecomastia or anything of the sort. That's
yeah,
something that's not observed. Yeah.
yeah.
Um,
Oh, it's more the fact that you think you can tolerate more testosterone as a result because you're like,
yeah.
it's similar to primo or mass, I can have higher tests and therefore tolerate higher tests and estrogen. But that's not the case because you don't have that, A to E ratio so much skewed in favor of androgens again.
Mhm.
Therefore, I would say that the circulating E2 might be higher as a result.
And then the neurological impacts that you would look at in that department are quite significant as well, which funnels
Yes.
us into like the impacts around anxiety and whatnot as well.
Mm.
I'm actually unfamiliar with what is the appetite stimulus which occurs via, I was going to say EQ, via boldenone. What's the
Well,
mechanism for that?
It's one of those things where because I don't recommend it so highly, that is
Mm.
one element I really should learn more about.
Yeah,
But
because I don't
because
know. I'll
the
admit
negatives
I
are
don't know. Yeah.
so vast, I'm
Mhm.
like, I can't even justify it. So
Mhm.
it's hard to justify a drug based on an appetite upregulation because there are
Yeah.
things that we can do to improve that. There are lifestyle behaviors and sort of holistic measures that we can take beforehand before jumping to an issue like that.
Yeah, no, it's definitely something that I haven't. I've only probably tried to really explore it lately, but I did explore it early on because when I first started bodybuilding, EQs were used.
Mm, mm.
Yeah, and funnily enough, I actually did very similarly where I would just pump Arimidex because I
Yep.
thought that and I'll never forget that. And I remember back then labs were quite difficult. You couldn't just pay for them. You had to go
Yeah.
through a doctor. So it was very, very hard to get a gauge on that. And that was probably the first and only time I ever used EQ, and this would have been many, many years ago. I
Yeah.
understand the position we're in now. I do think sometimes it can allow for a little bit more of an accrual of testosterone, but then
Mm,
you start presenting side effects down the accrual of testosterone of itself, paired with the aforementioned by yourself,
mm.
and it becomes a new environment. And even when you start to see symptomology arise in, like, let's say, a test DQ stack, it's very, very hard to pinpoint where
What's
things
doing
went wrong.
what? Yep.
Yep. And I find that these are a little bit less, the side effects that you experience are a little bit less fleeting.
Mm,
And as opposed to with a traditional stack design, the side effects generally, when I say fleeting, I mean they do come and go, especially as you escalate, normalize. Obviously, you breach a threshold where things sort of just sit.
mm.
But on the contrary, an Angelone, I wouldn't even think to use as a replacement. Yeah, like
Yeah.
that wouldn't even be. I would pick EQ. I wouldn't like in a client. I would never use Boldenone for reference, but
Mm.
I would pick Boldenone before I would go with a like for like replacement via an Angelone.
Well, I mean, look, before I would even recommend the conversation around Nandrolone, the idea for me, yes, the psychological barrier and issues with
Mm.
the estrogen from Boldenone are apparent, but for me, it's the cardiovascular strain. I
Yeah.
think
Mm.
the fact that it stimulates EPO so
Mhm.
gargantuanly, it really causes an issue with blood viscosity. So
Mhm.
proliferation of red blood cell count, hematocrit, all of a sudden you've just got thick blood that
Mhm.
pumps poorly. So your risk of clotting, your risk of hypertension, essentially every cardiovascular risk that you can think of is tenfold.
Yeah.
Um, but the thing is, a lot of the things that you would do to remedy that aren't actually effective. A good example, like I've seen lots of guys go, oh, well, I've just got heaps of bile in the system. So every now and then I'll go donate blood and I'll just keep running Cialis year round. I'm like, well, Cialis is completely fucking useless in this
Yeah.
context
I can't
because
see why Salus would be.
but
Well,
it's so common. It's so common that these guys are like, I'll just run Cialis to help keep my blood thin. It's like, that's no,
yeah. I'm
no.
just thinking justification is the vasodilation could make that thick blood pass through more easily.
I mean,
But
you'd think so, but because the Cialis doesn't work on the same axis
mm,
that EPO proliferation
mm,
does in terms of that existence, it's just you're essentially trying to stop the water leaving the tank instead of just turning the fucking tap off. Like
mhm.
you're trying to cup the hands underneath the tap to
Yeah.
stop the water. It's just not going to be effective.
Mhm.
But yeah, like that massive strain cardiovascularly is just not something you can really overcome to be a worthwhile investment.
Yeah, no, I'm just trying to think because Talmasartan's an option, blood donation, but blood donation, generally speaking, we would see an accrual faster with each donation.
Yeah. It's also going to fuck with
Maybe
your iron there
actually,
too,
yeah,
because
say,
you're going to be eating less iron typically if you
yeah.
are on EQ because you're sitting there going, right, well, I don't want further issues with red blood cell count.
Mhm.
So you're going to donate blood. You're also not going to be eating lots of red meat and whatnot. So as a result, you're probably going to have issues with micronutrient disposition as well
Yeah.
as electrolyte balance.
Do you find that people do avert from red meat or like
Yes.
iron-based foods to try and manage that?
Yep.
Again, that's not something I've seen significant improvements with. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, unless I've had high ferritin before, but I did genetic testing for hemochromatosis, and believe
Mm.
it or not, around the time I was using Primobolan, which ended up being EQ. But
That'll do it.
the only thing that I'm not too sure about there in regards to my anecdote is my hematocrit, red blood cell count, etc., were quite normal. Not normal, but they weren't bad. But also as well, from a case to case perspective, it does vary. I see
Yeah.
guys just run tests and the hematocrit's 60%.
Well, that's what I mean. Like if you look at these drugs through a holistic lens
Mhm.
rather than just trying to isolate one or the other, they all do that same thing. They do increase red blood cell count and hematocrit. It's the fact that boldenone just does it exponentially more than any other drug. So it's not as if it is isolated to this one drug. It exists on all of these anabolics, but it's the rate at which it exists with the EQ that's the problem.
Yeah, no, agreed. What are your thoughts on Nandrolone?
I've often said I would rather inject dirty water from a puddle than an insulin, and I stand by
Yeah.
that.
I've never used Nandrolone, believe it or not.
Me neither.
Yeah. Mhm.
I think it comes from the poor understanding a lot of people might have around 19 testosterones.
Mhm.
Because everyone uses them like, oh, bulking drugs, cutting drugs, and all this. And you're like,
Mhm.
well, I mean, realistically, we know that they all
Mhm.
build muscle at the same rate, virtually.
Mhm.
So it's what else they do that determines when, why, and how much we use them. So something like nandrolone, we know it doesn't build any more muscle than any of the other drugs aforementioned here. We know that it doesn't provide really any benefits. Even the potential joint health benefits really aren't that impressive.
Yeah, at all.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and once you start to dig into it, it actually causes issues with tendons and ligaments.
Mhm.
So the risk of injury is far greater as a result because you're going to feel bulletproof, but
Mhm.
the actual joints function and capacity is so diminished that you might get injured way easier.
Mhm.
But the psychological issues, that's the nandrolone that we all know and love.
Yeah, that's where I draw. That's all I really need to be able to draw a line there.
Absolutely.
I can see justification in regards to giving support for training performance in a position where like it might be compromised through like just ligament joint strain, just through that
Mm.
perception of it within reason. And I can see how that might indirectly translate to more progression because if you're able to progress further, you'll creep better and whatnot as well.
Well,
But
yeah.
what you've mentioned, plus the psychological side effects impair the longevity associated, and I'm yet to really meet someone who hasn't had side effects like of the sort from Deca. Yeah.
I mean, look, when it comes to DECA, there are so many reasons. Like you could write an entire novel as to why. But the main ones for me, and I like to start with, obviously we know the majority of people know
Mhm.
what it does wrong, but
Mhm.
they go, oh, the training benefits, like you just discussed.
Mhm.
And to a degree, sure, absolutely. I
Mhm.
think that it can be beneficial in that regard. But the fact is, it is going to massively disrupt your body's ability to create stimulus.
Mhm.
It downregulates the production of nitric oxide, so you're not going to be able to get a proper pump. So nitrogen retention is going to be downregulated. As a result, your
Mhm.
ability to build muscle, in theory, is downregulated.
Mhm.
So that's the whole idea of like the decadent situation, right? It really comes from the idea of nitric oxide. The situation with nitric oxide is downregulated. So your
Yeah.
body's ability to use these things and create this environment is just not the same. So the potential benefits are almost negated as a result.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, interestingly enough, I actually wasn't aware of that regarding the Decadic.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
so
it's
bizarre.
always been a bit of a phenom for me.
Well, and once
Yeah.
again, it's something that something like Cialis
Mhm.
can't even remedy,
Yeah,
right?
because yeah, exactly right.
It
Yeah.
works once the tap is on, but if the tap's not on, there's no water to move.
Yeah, and I do find the distress when the Cialis doesn't improve the issue in an individual is quite high.
Oh yeah,
Yeah. And the
yeah.
problem with something like an androlone is the impacts are long lasting. Even with
Mm,
the phenylpropionate, I still do find these effects do linger for quite some time following discontinuation.
yeah. I
And
think
that's outside of prolactin, because prolactin does take a long time to normalize as well.
yes.
Yeah.
The when it comes to the sort of longitudinal issues with nandrolone, people fail to understand why. And the easiest way to explain it to people, especially young men,
Mhm.
talk about finasteride or 5-alpha reductase
Yeah.
inhibitors. And this is to do with the fact that people have a very poor understanding of, let's just say, male characteristic hormones.
Mhm.
Everyone likes to sit here. I made a story the other day. Everyone likes to sit here and talk about how testosterone is the male caricature. Like it is, for lack of a better word, the man hormone. But I disagree. I think because it is existing, to a decent degree in both men and women, it's
Mhm.
not really going to be the big one. Obviously, it's just to do with the amount circulating.
Yeah.
But DHT, that is what makes a man,
Okay.
right?
Mhm.
And the issue with something like finasteride, obviously, you are preventing that conversion to 5-alpha reductase. So that enzyme it comes full circle because that enzyme is very strongly attached to primobolan and masteron, right? They are already 5-alpha reduced.
Mhm.
So those two drugs having that relationship with androgens is very, very potent. Something like nandrolone in its inception was designed to be more approachable for the androgen sensitive cohort, so women, children, the elderly. And as a result, they were looking to unbind its relationship with androgens. They're trying to make it more anabolic than androgenic.
Hmm.
However, they found after thousands and thousands of potential compounds were created that the anabolism to androgenicity idea is something that's almost inseparable. Like you cannot have anabolism without androgens to some degree. You can change the ratio, but you cannot have them divorced of one another completely.
Hmm.
So when we come full circle now to nandrolone, once again, nandrolone does not have any sort of alpha reductase enzyme conversion happening. You do not get DHT occurring. You
Hmm.
get DHN, which is a very weak androgen. As a result, you have a poor estradiol conversion because whilst it is, an aromatizing drug, it doesn't have the same amount as testosterone.
Hmm.
So that on its own is a huge issue.
Hmm.
But the issue that I'm most concerned with is the DHT or lack thereof.
Hmm. Yeah. Are you talking about pairing this in conjunction with a testosterone base as well?
Yes, yeah.
Yes, because obviously there is a standalone DECA use as well, which you've
Which
probably
is, I'm going to be totally honest, that's stupid. That's really stupid.
that's fucking stupid. Yeah, it is, but it's not unheard of. Let's just say.
No,
Yeah.
not unheard of at all.
Mhm. Because you would still see adequate conversion to dihydrotestosterone via testosterone if that was in as a base.
Yeah, you would
Your
still see
concern,
some.
yeah, your concern would be that that would not be to a sufficient extent.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, realistically, DHN causes a variety of issues
yeah,
within the system. Um, but I'm really just most concerned with the lack of DHT full stop.
yeah,
So
of
you're
course.
going to have issues, less so with, say, your hair, right? I know people sit here and they talk about the hair, and I
Yeah,
just don't want to lose my hair. And it's like, well, if you're going to lose it, you're going to fucking lose it.
and if you're
But
bodybuilding, you shouldn't care. Yeah, yeah,
you get my point.
yeah. Mhm. Yeah, no, it's actually quite interesting because if you pay attention to this, especially for anyone listening, most guys that do use like a finasteride of the sorts, you do notice
Mm,
a change in their behavior
absolutely.
to a degree as well. And it's not necessarily their behavior, it's probably, I don't want to say their masculinity, maybe probably more so their drive.
The word I would use is assertiveness.
Yes, that's precisely the right word.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I've seen it especially in in people over years and people that I know who use finasteride who are prospective clients and they're starting with you.
Mm.
And you do observe it in their behavior. And I know it's a weird observation. It's something I sort of picked up on multiple years ago, and then I started to pay attention.
Well,
Is
yeah.
mm,
I mean, look, it is something that more men know about in terms of like the drug itself
mm,
than they want to admit, right?
yeah,
For a lot of young men, losing your hair is the worst thing that can happen to you. And I'm
mm,
like, it's not. But the point is it's very tied to one's identity.
mm,
So pretty much everyone knows about it. What
mm,
they fail to understand is that it does change things like the reward center in the brain. So you don't have that drive, you don't have that dopaminergic response from achieving things,
mm.
which is really, really fucking bad.
Yeah, and I feel like most people wouldn't really acknowledge it, especially because
No.
it is as people approach their 30s that they do start to deploy these kind of medications. It
They
can
just think they're getting
easily
old.
be, yes, exactly right. It can be very easily just trade-offs. Yeah, I'm getting old. I'm not as ambitious as I used to be. I've got kids now. I'm
Mm,
married now. When really that's not the case. Like
no.
I'm 31 and I feel better than I've ever felt, really.
Mm,
Yeah, I don't think but I've always been a believer. This is a whole different deep dive we could go into at another point. I've been a believer that like not you're as old as you think you are, but for example, professional sportsmen's getting to 30 and then they're sort of over the hump. I
mm.
think this lifestyle and personal factors which put them in that position rather than the fact that they're actually on the decline from a performance perspective.
Yes.
Like you think of an AFL player on like not an incredible wage. At 30, they need to start thinking about their career after football.
Mm.
So instead of putting that extra 5 hours of training and recovery per week, they're focusing on their business. Anyway, let's not get into that. But
No, no, I see what you
yeah,
mean.
yeah, but like
I think
yeah,
as well, like the idea of being over the hump is something that people throw themselves at
mm,
all the time. I
mm,
know they're gonna hate being called out here, but your client Christy, my client Tim,
mm,
wonderful people. And
yeah,
one of the most important things that I've really expressed to Tim is that realistically here, this is not us piloting fighter jets, right? We don't hit a certain point at say, 28 to 30, whereby your eyesight and fast twitch reaction time is downregulated just enough percentage to no longer be as capable in a fighter jet, right?
yeah,
This is something that time compounds, right? I don't care if you're 20, I don't care if you're 50. If you've lived a lifestyle long enough and you realistically enforce these behaviors over time, you are only going to get better.
mhm,
Like if you're acting like a wanker, then no. But if you are deliberately eating well, keeping active, resistance training, and staying, neurologically sound, you will just get better and better with time.
Mhm. Yeah.
I mean, in bodybuilding, like some of the best guys, they don't peak until late 30s, early 40s.
I think the only exception you could create, like you could make to that rule, is like just risk profiles as you get older
Yeah, yeah,
regarding
that's
in an
different. Yeah.
enhanced athlete. But external of that, I'm saying for both of our arguments,
Mm,
exclusive of that, like yeah, it's all you are still in complete control. Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. And yeah, healthy should become more prominent as you get older. But your question as well, is that getting older? Is that just years to decades of neglect?
Mm,
You'll never know. Yeah.
yeah. Well, that's
Um,
what I mean as well. You're going to age more
yeah.
gracefully when
Yeah,
you
of
do live
course.
this lifestyle. Like,
Mhm.
um, I like to use my grandparents as a reference. They're both, in their early 80s or late 70s now, and they're still active. When it's too hot or stormy on a day, instead of going for a walk down by the point, they'll instead go to the shops and they'll walk around the shops because
Mhm.
they want to stay active. They want to keep their minds and bodies sharp. And as a result, they're aging far better than their peers.
Mhm. Of course. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you probably even see that with like the ethnic elderly versus
Mm,
some of the less ethnic elderly, because ethnic elderly, there is a I can't think of the word again. Like generally speaking, they are more likely to live sedentary,
mm. It's a
more
cultural thing.
yeah, it's a cultural thing where like their lifestyles are very reflective of the age bracket which they're at,
Yeah.
where I feel like that's less common in like well in the generation above us, I guess. Because I
Yeah.
have uncles who are like one of my uncles is about 70, and because he doesn't have that sort of mentality, you can see how much better he ages compared to like my grandmother above when she was 70. You know what
Mm.
I mean? Yeah. Interesting convo, but we do have to wrap it up there.
That's all good.
Appreciate you jumping on, bro. We probably should do this again to get a nice deep dive of something a bit more
I'd
Gen
love to.
Bobby. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But hopefully people enjoyed that. That was good. That was
That
good.
was
I
really good. I enjoyed
appreciate
that a lot.
yeah, I appreciate the I learned a couple things there too, so that was great. Even just the way it's contextualized is great too.
Yeah, I think
We talk
it's so
about
many
it.
people like they can get lost in the weeds. So if you can
Yeah.
just sort of make it digestible and relatable, it's far more enjoyable for not only everyone else to listen to, but for us to converse with.
Yeah, I think the EQ concept will be a bit of a trigger for some as well. Because it is commonly used as like a treated as an AI.
Well,
Not
yeah,
actually an AI, but you know what I mean.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, but then again, like I said to you as well, like for symptomology like gynecomastia, it does settle it. So it
Yeah,
can easily give that
that
perception.
impression, but that's just to do with its,
Yeah.
conversion.
Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, bro.
Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.